How you doing, everybody? This is Eric from Wasteland.com. Everyone complained last time that I didn't schedule this, that I just did it all of a sudden, and so this time I gave you a heads up because last time I did it on a total whim. So this time I went ahead and scheduled it. If you guys have a specific time you want it to be, a couple times a week maybe. I try to do it at a time that would be maybe doable for Pacific time and East Coast time. What's up, Horror Amino? Is that like an amino acid? Thanks for tuning in. If you guys have any subjects you want to talk about, just go ahead and post them in the chat. If not, I'm going to go ahead and show off some of the camping gear I've been using on my recent trips to Pacific Northwest, some of which I got from BattleBox, which I've been testing out. But if you guys have any questions, yeah, how you doing, Prepper Princess? You're welcome. What is my favorite prep that you have, or that I have? Wow, that's a tough one. Other than guns, because I'm a huge gun enthusiast, that would be a really tough one. Man, I'll think about that while I'm doing this live stream. If something pops into my head. But obviously, I like recreational shooting, so the firearms are obviously going to mesh well with my interests. Even they've considered a. How you doing, Mike? Thanks for stopping in. You post an update soon, man, on how your stuff's going. It's crazy tracking your progress. What is your least favorite prep you have? Oh, that's another good question. I don't have any real interest in like the communication stuff, like radio, stuff like that. So I have a few little radios, but it's something that I've done just because I know I need to have that squared away. It's not something that I have any particular like interest in. I don't dislike it by any means, but it's not something that I have any particular interest in beyond just recognizing that it's a very useful thing. So some of my favorite preps probably would just be the knives and guns. I really love shooting. Yeah, same with the medical stuff. I mean, medical stuff is particularly I don't want to say troublesome, but it's expensive to get good quality medical gear, and it's something that I know you have to be prepared. So I have some. I've gotten lucky. I have some family members that are nurses have been giving me a few things. My dad's got me some cool stuff, which I'm going to get to show off in my next survival movie review, which I'm probably going to do on Panic in the Year Zero, which is like one of the original shit hit the fan movies about nuclear. Make sure I say it right. I always said it like George Bush. Nuclear. So I try really hard to say nuclear. Bards might be needles. Yeah, exactly. There's all sorts of stuff you can acquire if you keep your eyes open for medical equipment. Not even ham. I mean, if I have to get a serious radio, delicious ham is definitely going to be the one. And if you guys are into radios, Rogue Preparedness, which I did a spotlight on her channel, she's done some recent videos on that. They know a lot more about it than I do. Like I said, I recognize the utility of it, and repping the Chick-fil-A again. It seems to be like a weekly habit. I recognize the utility of the radio, but it's just not something that I really have any particular interest in. My Horror Amino says, Prepper Princess is strong about financial prepping. What's your stand on it? I've made a video about this years ago. I think it's extremely important. In fact, I think it's probably the most important thing that someone can do when you're talking about general overall preparedness and not just doomsday prepping or major shit hit the fan. Because when you think about all the stuff that can happen in your life, that has happened in our lives, it's happened in the history of the country, having a big stack of money, not necessarily paper currency, but wealth, is going to be the most important thing and the best way to survive those, because it's extremely rare, luckily, that you get in a situation where people who have tons of actual wealth in various forms just can't get the things they need. I mean, look at stuff like Venezuela. People who had stacks of gold and silver there are going to be fine. And it's the people who don't have money that are suffering. Even someone who had 6 months supply of food there is going to be suffering now because this is a long-term ongoing thing. Mike said a full battlefield kit. Nice, man. Nice. Waking the masses. KFC? Nah, man. KFC doesn't do it for me. I'm not even really into fried chicken that much. It's just, for whatever reason, the Chick-fil-A just feeds my soul. Mic drop. Who dropped the mic? Drop the mic. Reminds me of the song. What's that? Beastie Boys? All right, so here's a couple things that I've taken camping from these latest trips into the Pacific Northwest. One thing I came up with is these fire gloves. These are big leather welding gloves. They're called fire gloves. These are called no-cry heavy-duty gloves because we were having a lot of trouble with the little travel spatulas and stuff cooking on the fire. You have to get really close. Our hands are getting roasted. Obviously, it's not feasible to carry a big fire poker if you're camping. So I got a pair of these leather gloves. And if you need to save space, you can take only one of them because most of the time you'd only use one arm. It makes a huge difference in being able to shift a log if you need to, move a fire grate back, grab a pot, stuff like that. Okay, Seamus, O'Rourke says, okay, that being said, what would be a good stack of silver in ounces? Anything helps. Obviously, it's just how much is a good amount of money to have. You know, you can talk about amount of money. Any amount of money is helpful. Then you can talk about the next level would probably be something that would not allow you to ever have to work again or something like that. I think a good goal for normal people should be like at least 100 ounces of silver. That's just a couple $1,000 bucks, you know, a few ounces of gold. Something like that is totally doable, sets you benchmark. But I like to think of it more along the lines of that silver and gold are money, and that's where you should put your excess wealth unless you need to buy something with it. And I think you should diversify too. So don't go out and put all your money into gold and silver. But, you know, certainly I think having something like 10 or 20% in it is fine, especially right now with the way the markets are overvalued, things like that. Obviously, if you've been in the markets for the past few years, you've made a ton of money, but that's not going to go on forever. And we're overdue, so to speak, for a correction based on the cyclical patterns that we've seen. I hope it lasts a little bit longer. Gold and silver prices are incredibly cheap right now. I recommend picking some up. But like I said, a couple hundred to a few hundred ounces of silver is a good goal, and anywhere from 2 or 3 to 10 ounces of gold. You know, if you get a stash like that, that's going to help out in a lot of situations. And it's not so much that you can't grab it and go throw it in your car or something like that. That's the problem with silver. If you start talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars or things like that, I would probably go more towards gold simply because of the space that much silver would take out. You're talking about hundreds of pounds of silver. Silver just over $10 an ounce. Yeah. Oh, it's an amazing time to buy. Amazing. Cull coins, $20 for a silver dollar anywhere online. If shit the fan happens, you can trade one coin for a bag of flour. Oh yeah, I mean, they've talked about in Venezuela. I've seen articles, haven't had a chance to actually confirm this, but I've seen people saying that a silver ounce there can get you a month's worth of groceries. So obviously, having any amount of silver, gold, or just real assets is hugely useful in a financial shit the fan scenario that doesn't result in a total grid down collapse. Obviously, if there's an immense total financial collapse, like in the book Preppers or something, or Patriots it's called, sorry, and where we go to a WRL situation, then you mostly have the gold and silver to kind of weather the storm and use it afterwards, or use it once there's any sort of bartering and financial system rises back up. But anything short of that, where there's still, you know, a government of some kind, still a grid, still people paying taxes, going to work, which is going to be most situations, gold and silver is going to be really useful for that. What is my biggest concern with pandemics? What kind of pandemic? I don't know that much about these various diseases as to know whether a naturally occurring pandemic or something like a biological weapon would be more likely. In terms, I mean, obviously we've seen things like these swine flus and bird flus pop up. There's always a risk of something like a smallpox being weaponized. I actually have a smallpox vaccine, so you guys are shit out of luck. But that's because I was in the military and I had to get a ton of crazy vaccines, which I got out of as many as I could. But the smallpox one I figured was pretty safe. It's one of the oldest ones. It's one of the most reliably effective. It lasts a long time. Unlike the anthrax, you have to get like 7 shots and you don't even know if it works or not, things like that. So I would say some kind of like mutated influenza is probably the biggest risk of a naturally occurring, or some, you know, something that has become like a antibiotic resistant infection, like a that's a virus. So any other sort of like MRSA or some crazy flesh-eating necrotizing fasciitis that becomes a resistant to bacteria or to virus, or resistant to antibiotics and spreads. Purple Princess says she's plans for raising rabbits. Yeah, I've raised rabbits as a kid. We already have a rabbit dealer to give us 2 to start. That's cool. The good thing about rabbits is you can feed them off low grass and plants that you wouldn't be able to use for anything else otherwise. You know, like they can synthesize protein out of plants that we can't even get any real use out of. Whereas something like a lot of other animals like pigs or even chickens, like the stuff that you're feeding them, you could even eat most of the time, or at least use for other purposes. Whereas rabbits, they can eat stuff. You can just let them graze in the yard if you have one, and for the most, eat clovers and stuff like that. And so they're really easy to raise. They grow very quickly and breed very quickly. There's not a lot of, it's very lean meat, so you have to have some other source of fat in your diet, but that shouldn't be too difficult, especially if you have the chicken eggs and things like that. What's my MOS? My MOS was 88 Alpha, which was a transportation officer. So it's the officer version of an 88 Mike or a truck driver. I was trying to be a aviation officer, a helicopter pilot, and I smoked the flight aptitude test at the University of Florida. But due to my mediocre grades and the fact that you just ask for what you want and then they just, needs of the Army, put you where you want, I ended up with transportation. Todd Hendrick says, I will use them as a natural pest control. Just, yeah, for rabbits you're talking about? I just got additional half-acre opened up and well restored. Ava says, what do you think of silver, gold chain necklaces or bracelets using the links as barter? Yes, or just stick to coin? If you're purely talking about that's the only reason you're getting it is for, preparedness and barter, then I would not buy necklaces and things like that. It's just the premium is too high versus just getting silver eagles and things like that, or junk silver. If you're really worried about barter and not paying a big premium, I'd go with junk silver. If you want the jewelry, sure, get gold or silver jewelry, and then it has that backup use. But if that's the only reason you're getting it, jewelry is just nowhere near the price per ounce that you can get for the pre-65 coins or just the silver rounds. And a silver round, even when you're talking about a situation like in Venezuela where it's a month's worth of groceries, that's still not enough that you would need to divide it. You can buy a month's worth of groceries or trade it for other things. So I wouldn't be too worried about having these tiny fractional pieces of silver. Something like a silver dime, you're never going to need to get smaller than that. Horror Amina says, watch Contagion and do a video on it. The script came out of a real medical history. I think that's on my list. I have about 50 movies on my a page to do these survival lessons on. So I think that's on one of those. Todd Hendricks says, a new 16 by 22 story shed built. To that, I'll add a chicken coop and chicken run. Awesome. If you got the space, that's fantastic. Seamus asks what my thoughts on the South African farmer situation. Seems like that is a shit at the fan in the making. Absolutely. It's already started. I just read an article yesterday or today about they have officially seized the first farm that they are buying it, but it's, like an eminent domain type thing where they're forcing the guy to sell it at about 1/10 of what he says the property is worth or what they're asking for. They said, okay, we'll sell it to you. We think it's worth $18 million, and they gave him like $1.5 million, something like that. So it's obviously a massive either civil war or humanitarian crisis in the making. If you go, there's some a documentary that Lauren Southern did on called Farmlands. I suggest watching that. Total shitstorm is about to erupt over there. And add to that, Johannesburg is having a massive water crisis. They've actually run out of water. Not a good time to be in South Africa, I would guess, especially if you're white. Goats, they will eat anything and are good for meat and milk. Yeah, same thing. If you have the space, they'll lay waste to weeds and pretty much any other plant. So be careful. That's something that people don't mention often enough. I think as they talk about having chickens eating bugs out of their garden and stuff like that. That can work, but you need to have some netting around a lot of the plants because they will just shred everything. If you've seen an area that has chickens running in it constantly, it's usually just bare dirt because they eat every bug, every scrap of greenery or anything. They just tear it up and devour it. So be careful if it's plants that you want to thrive. Kelly says, hello, Eric. I'm late. Just got home from work. Glad you could make it. Yeah, I just started less than 15 minutes ago. What is the best way to start stacking silver? Says Justin. The best way is to just start buying it in small amounts. Think of it, get the stuff that you like is actually the best way to motivate yourself. So even if you might think that a particular form would be best, if there's something that interests you, get that, because that is what is going to be easiest for you to put money aside and spend money on. So I would go to your Prepper Princess channel and other channels like that to find out ways that you can set aside money, but don't overlook just even small amounts like if you're talking about $5 a week, that's more than enough to buy an ounce of silver a month, which may not be that much, but that's something. And when, like I just said, an ounce of silver right now in Venezuela can buy a whole month's worth of groceries. Any little bit set aside is meaningful. And then another way would be to look around at all the stuff in your house that you don't even need and sell that on eBay, Amazon, Craigslist. I actually have written a book on the subject. It's called How to Make Money Buying and Selling on eBay and Amazon. It's on Amazon. You can usually find the link in my video descriptions. If not, I'll put it in the description to this after the video is posted. All right, what else we got? Levi says, thanks for your service. It was my pleasure. Paul says, junk silver probably have the most utility in a shit the fan scenario. Yeah, I mean, silver. I think that is going to be the utility. The specific utility of the junk silver is that it's going to be easily recognizable, smaller amounts, and right now it's a cheap premium. So it's kind of the best of all worlds. Do you have a family to plan for, says Philosopher Bees? I have a family. None of them live locally with the exception of my girlfriend. So right now my preparedness plan is just for 2 people. So, I mean, once I get to fully 6 months of everything that I think I need, then I can look beyond that, because my close family, my like immediate family members are nowhere, you know, they're back in Florida, East Coast area. So it's not really realistic that they would show up at my doorstep or anything like that. Just the 2 mutts that we got to take care of too. White Space Marine says, where do you get those water or fuel canisters behind you? These were just from Amazon. I think these were either from Amazon or Sportsman's Guide. If you can, I would spring for the plastic ones. I think they're for gas and water. I think they're better than the metal ones because these can rust, and they're also, you know, can get punctured or dented and a little more fragile. So these aren't cheap, but they'll last forever if you can, you know, take decent care of them. So those are just on Amazon. I think they're like $35 for the water ones, something like that. All right. Prepper Princess isn't allowed to have rabbits until after something happens. Where are you going to get them then if it's already something happened? Chickens for dinner are out of the question. Yeah, I know they're your pets, but that, as long as they're people would always ask me that because I had chickens for a while in Florida, and I had one that got sick, and so I had separated it in a separate pen because it had an impacted crawl, and I didn't want to feed it for a day or 2 to hopefully work its way out. And I let my dog out like I always do, Mongo, and he grabbed the chicken through the cage and injured it mortally, and I had to put it down. And everyone asked if I ate it, and I was like, this was like an old hen, and it's like it was impacted crawl, got torn open by my dog, and I'd have to like pluck it and cook it and do. Not that I have any aversion to doing that either morally or squeamishly or anything like that. Done it before, but I can go to Walmart and get a pristine, plump, cooked, seasoned, hot rotisserie chicken for $4.99. I'm just too lazy to be doing that with an old hen in my backyard, especially one that was like basically a pet anyway. So that was the reason why I don't do that. What are you going to do for water storage? 55-gallon containers? Asked Kelly. Yes, they when I was back, either those or the 275-gallon IBC totes. I just got a line on some of those buckets for out here right now. I just have a bunch of water storage containers like this and a bunch of 2 liters down here because I've been trying to figure out if I'm going to go with because I just rent right now. So I want to get something that's a little bit easier to move until I have a place here that I own. So I'll start with the 50-gallon drums because they're only about the food grade plastic ones here. I think I can get for 25 or 30 bucks. So I just need to rent it. I don't have a van or a pickup anymore, so I got to have a way to get them. But that is the plan, is the barrels. Let's see what else we got. Boris says, how are those Coleman canisters working for? I keep hearing they don't do well in MSR burners. MSR, I'm not really remembering what MSR is, but I use the Coleman canisters for the camp stoves. I use it for the camping lanterns. I've had no issues with them. The only issue is that if you're storing at your house, it's better to get the bigger canisters because for the same amount of space, you can hold vastly more. But for travel, obviously, camping, things like that, the little canisters are better. Silver, good price. Been holding on to tax return. You don't eat your pet chickens. I would not eat my pets. Yeah, I mean, if it came down to a life or death situation, I think I would eat my pets. If it really came down to my life, or would be saved if I did. But other than that, just because, I mean, bottom line, especially when you're talking about a chicken, a whole chicken, you're adding maybe another day by eating it onto whatever you had. A whole rotisserie chicken has like 15 to 2,200 calories or something, depending on how big it is. So that's not a whole hell of a lot. So certainly if you can even keep getting a couple eggs a week out of it, long term, that would be your better bet, just calorie wise. Salute you, sir, and glad to subscribe. Well, thank you. Right back at you. Todd says 275 containers. No way, nothing outside my house that say preppers. I mean, this around here, yeah, sure, you can cover it with a tarp, things like that. It's not like it would be my front yard. Around here, all the houses are surrounded by 6-foot concrete block fences, walls. So your backyard is pretty private. You can do whatever you want. So, and honestly, people mentioned this concept before about like people not knowing what you have being super, super important. And it can be, obviously, if it gets to a point where people are starving, and not knowing what you have is important, but it's always better to have the things that you need, regardless of whether people know about it or not. If your choice is to not have water or to have water and have, but everybody knows about it, obviously I'm just going to go with having the water, have everyone know about it, and then try to solve that problem, because not having water is a much bigger problem. And most people aren't going to know what it is. They're just going to see a big square thing covered with a tarp in your backyard and think it's a pallet of pavers or whatever, you know. It doesn't, or think it's a, you know, some weird chemical or something. You could write something on it if you know that's bogus about what is in the contents, so that people don't know it's water if you're really worried about that. Any thoughts on steel versus brass? I mean, it just comes down to the weapon you have, what you're doing with it, things like that. I buy a lot of that cheap ammo, and I haven't had too many issues with it. You can't reload with the steel cases. Some guns are, don't handle it well, so you got to try it out. But a lot of guns do. Especially if you have like one of the Soviet bloc weapons, like these, like an SKS here, AK, and things like that, then you shouldn't have any issue. But if you notice that your gun has issues with it, or extractors getting damaged, things like that, then don't use it. But you got to test it out. That's the only way to really know with your weapons. Horror says, I don't think so. 22 long rifle could end up being the new coins if shit hit the fan. I don't know. I mean, I know people will want ammo, but I never see something consumable as being and not renewable as being the ammo, because people are just going to get it because they need to use it. They're not going to set it aside and wait to trade for it again. The reason it's desirable is because people need to use it. In the same way that food isn't going to become the new currency. It'll become valuable, but it's not going to be the actual currency. People will trade with it and for it, but that's not necessarily the same thing. Is it possible to have too much 22 long rifle? No, I don't think so. Man, I haven't counted it lately, but I wouldn't be surprised if I had 50,000 rounds of 22 long rifle. And it's certainly not. That's why that's so cheap. I mean, I think it's 17 at Walmart. It's $17 for a 550. So for $100 by 17, you can get 5.88 packs times 550. So you can get over 3,200 rounds for $100. Can't beat that. And then especially when you combine it with a reliable semi-automatic rifle like this, which you can have 30 to 50 round magazines for fairly cheap. I don't think there's any reason why everyone shouldn't have a few thousand, at least 5,000 rounds of 22 long rifle. Let's see what else we got. Count Spooky says, good evening. Good evening. Yeah, Seamus says, having too much 22 long rifle is like having too much air. Exactly. Ammo is not something that if stored well, modern ammo doesn't tend to go bad if you keep it dry and things like that. So you could always sell it. It hasn't really gone down. I mean, there's been fluctuations, but the trend line is pretty predictable. So even if you're just going to think you're going to use it for plinking in the future, you might as well buy it now at the cheaper prices. Yeah, Pepper Princess says she has a 15,000-gallon swimming pool. Yeah, people have asked about that. Swimming pools are a great way to store water. Like I've mentioned in the last live stream, actually, you have to be careful with the level of chlorine that's in it at any given moment. So you probably have to let it sit for a few days, or else you might get sick. I don't think you would die or anything. And like I mentioned in the last live stream, if you stumbled in out of the desert dying of thirst and there's a swimming pool there, yeah, you could drink that and you're probably not going to die. You might throw up if it's really, really chlorinated, but it's still better to have it. And certainly just let it sit for a day or two without putting any chlorine in it, maybe a few days, and then put it through a filter like you would any other water. I mean, when you store water in big containers like that, you still need to be prepared to either boil it or filter it, because or treat it with something, because algae can grow in it, especially in a pool. Detritus can get in, all sorts of stuff could happen. Who knows? But yeah, 50,000 gallons. Nice. That's a few months worth of water. Todd says I put 55-gallon drums in basement, 1,500 square foot basement. Sure. Yeah. Exactly. Good way to do it. Levi says Norinco's 7.62s don't care about steel or brass. Yeah, exactly. A lot of the old, it almost seems like the expensive modern guns are the ones that are fickle about the stuff, and the older, cheaper guns are the ones that can handle it. But like I mentioned, you just, for the steel brass, you just have to test it out and see. And if you're worried about it, get an extra extractor or bolt carrier for something like an AR-15. And if it starts to get worn out, because that's not very expensive, you probably would save more money if you're shooting a lot, shooting steel than you would the brass, and then you could just buy a new or use the new extractor. Ava says, you said you have a girlfriend. How did you get her on board with being prepared? I mean, to some extent, I never really worried about it. It's all my money and my doing that goes into the preparedness. She's not anti-prepared. She appreciates having the preparedness and things like that. But it wasn't really an issue of convincing her or anything like that. I was going to do it either way. So I know she appreciates not having to worry about things like that. And she certainly doesn't worry about zombie apocalypse as much as I do. But it's definitely a good, she definitely, I think, appreciates not having to, or knowing that if something crazy does happen, that we'll be fine. But yeah, the answer is I didn't even worry about it. It's not, that's how I roll, man. I do my thing. Kelly says, is that the Super Sport Berkey filter behind you on the shelf? And have you used it and thoughts on it? I'm considering buying one soon. I have several Sawyer and Lifestrong. Yeah, this is the Berkey, I forget the model number. It's the big one for the family one. And I used that as my main water filter back in Florida because I had the fluoride filters in it too. And it worked great. It's a little bit kind of finicky to set up. You have to make sure. I had a little bit of a problem with leakage around this, the bottom port there. And some people have said that you could have some leakage between the two canisters. And the problem is that if there is leakage there, you won't necessarily know it. So people have mixed opinions about it. But assuming there was no leakage there that I didn't know about, I had no issues with it. It's kind of it's a gravity drip fed, so it's kind of slow. Right now, I'm using for just day-to-day stuff. I've set this aside to be my preparedness shit the fan filter because it filters better for diseases and microbes and things like that. But for my day-to-day tap water filtering, I have a tabletop or a countertop reverse osmosis filter to get all the microplastics, the fluoride, and all the endocrine disruptors and all that crap. So this is set aside. I've got an extra set of filters in a box nearby for collected water and things like that after the any shit to fan scenario. Let's see what else we got. Justin Miles says, what are your thoughts on having cheap water filters for barter? I mean, they could be useful. If my philosophy on barter is that there's no point in buying something just for barter until you have everything else that you're going to need already taken care of. So find out what your prepping plan is, whether that's to be prepped for 6 months, whether that's to be for a year, 2 years, 72 hours, doesn't matter. Whatever it is, come up with that plan specifically, like I've said in one of my recent videos, so and then write out what do I need for, let's say it's 3 months. What do I need for 3 months of water? What do I need to purify it? What do I need for 3 months of food? What do I need to cook it? What do I need for my pets for 3 months? What do I need for medicine, for toiletries? Get all that stuff on a list and then start getting it. And then I wouldn't worry about anything to do with bartering with other people or anything else until you have everything on that list. Then you can start worrying about stuff like that. But in terms of specific items, yeah, that could be a fine item for barter. Someone says, what solar gear do you have? Right now, I don't have much. I actually, this is a preview for you guys who are tuning into the live stream. I contacted the guys from Sun Oven because I'd met with them at the Prepper conference, the Prepper Expo years ago. And now that I'm out in Vegas, it's a perfect spot for it. And that was one of my plans for how I wanted to take care of the cooking element for my 6-month preparedness plan instead of just trying to rely on all these canisters of propane. So they are going to be sending me a Sun Oven, and I'm going to be testing that out, making a few videos, things like that. As far as solar electricity, I have a few items like this one that I'm actually going to be doing a review on soon because I took it camping. They sent me a solar battery charger. It doesn't have to be solar, but it can just also be solar. So I have that, and I think that's about it. I don't really have a solar setup of any kind, at least not yet. When I buy my, if / when I actually buy a place here in Vegas, I absolutely want to get an off-grid solar setup. There's so much sunlight, it's perfect for it. So that is where I'm at right now with solar gear. Boris says, I only wonder how much use a chemist would be in a full-blown shit fan scenario. Oh, I mean, I don't know. It depends on their skills and what you're trying to do. So what else we got? Horror Mina says, I've thought about learning how to make a water still to clean salt and fluorinated water. Who thinks that would be a good idea? If you are oceanside, I think it would be a great idea. If you are near a giant source of salt water, it's not difficult to build a solar still of some kind. You can look it up online. The problem is, unless you have a really massive one, you don't get that much water out of it. You could have, obviously, a still like they use to distill whiskey or something like that, where you're actually boiling water and collecting the steam, and you can get a lot of water that way, but it would also take a lot of fuel. Or you could come up with, I know they have some big operations where they use like Fresnel lenses to focus the sun's beam on some kind of pot and boil water that way. So if you could rig up something like that, that would be fantastic. And I would look into doing something like that if I was in a very dry place, like, you know, Southern California maybe, but that also was nearby saltwater, something like that. All right, will you bug in or get on the road? This is Philosopher Bees. I don't plan on bugging out unless I have a particular reason that I need to leave. For me, bugging out is not a primary plan unless you have like a kind of hidey hole prepper property that you just plan on going to. The idea of just, the shit hits the fan, I'm going to leave the city, I don't think is a great idea. And unless you have a very, very specific place that you're going to that's well stocked, things like that. For me, bugging out is a tool that you use when you have to leave, you know, similar to like first aid equipment or something. I don't just have first aid equipment because I want to put bandages in my body. I use them when I have a cut or a wound. And bugging out is something if, you know, it's a wildfire or a flash flood or an incoming army of zombies, whatever, and I have to leave, then that's when I bug out. Or if I need to go get somebody, something like that. It's not just something that I plan on doing automatically. Lacquered ammo is the way to go for long-term store. It can protect it, yeah. Especially if you have the steel, you want it to be lacquered for storage because brass won't, you know, rust the way steel ammo can. But I think some guns, the lacquered cases can really mess with it, gunk them up and things like that. So you got to be careful. Again, this is why you need to try it out in your particular guns. See what happens. Black or white filter for the Berkeys. I have, well, I have the black charcoal filter, and then on the underside there was the, or whichever way. One side has the fluoride filter, and the other side had the black filter. How out of date do you think military MREs are good? Depends on how they've been stored. I mean, they always said that they could last for 25 years, and but, you know, when I was in the service, you know, they only have a specific date, which is usually only a few years, I think. And but if you have it stored in a cool, dry place indoors, I mean, look at the channels like Steve MRE or whatever that guy's name is, who he does these MRE reviews. Really, really, really old MREs sometimes. We're talking like World War II MREs and stuff, and he'll still eat some of that stuff. So I think it's like canned goods. If it hasn't been breached, hasn't been baked or anything like that, then I think it would be edible and not dangerous, but it might be really gross. So I don't think there's a particular date. Bartering is a curious thing. Why would you buy something to barter when you could buy the item you need now? Exactly. I mean, I guess that's my stance on it. I guess the idea is that there might be things that you need that you don't know of now that other people might have. But I still think that that's only a consideration after you already get all the things that you know you're going to need. Because if there's something you know you're going to need, then why would you buy something else that you don't need just because you might be able to get something that you need, even though there's already something that you know you need? Doesn't make any sense to me. So I wouldn't worry about buying something strictly for barter until you have everything else that you need. All right, I'm almost caught up here. Teaching skills of value it can be. I got a solar oven to do a review. Love it. Use it every day. Yeah, I saw that one. It's pretty interesting. Do you ever watch Old Timer Log Cabin Looms? He's very good. I don't think I've heard of his channel. I have enough solar to support my entire home plus excess. I feed the grid and get money from the town. That's awesome, man. That's what I would like to do, but it's very expensive and I rent anyway right now, so it doesn't make sense. All right, what else we got? Almost caught up to the chats. Should put solar on every home and feed the grid. I mean, that would be ideal, I think, but someone's got to pay for it. And it still is at the point where it takes a few years, 5 to 10 years for most solar systems to break even on the initial outlay of cost. Why did you move to Nevada? Because I wanted to. No particular reason other than that. I'd lived in Florida for my whole life. And even though I've been everywhere else in the U.S., I haven't lived anywhere else. So I really always knew I liked the Southwest. I like Vegas. I like the weather, the landscape, all that stuff. So just wanted to do it and did it. Be a sage, teach others. Yeah. Fresnel lens and old television set. Interesting. Let's see what we got. MRA Steve, he's crazy though. Yeah, I think he's crazy. But he's alive. He's eating that stuff and he's alive. So like I said, we can't with sealed items like that, cans, pouches, as long as you haven't breached the packaging or it hasn't been really baked by the sun or anything like that, I think you'll be pretty safe. Would you stockpile ferro rods when you can buy a few dozen Bic lighters? Yeah, I wouldn't stockpile them. I would have some, but Bic lighters are very underrated, I think, because it's not like a cool or sexy way to start a fire, but they are the best way to start a fire. And it's very easy and cheap to have a ton of them. So I recommend having ferro rods and things like that, but Bic lighters are the best way to start fires. What do you do for work? Right now, I am exclusively doing stuff online, get the YouTube revenue. I sell stuff on eBay and Amazon. I do some other affiliate sales, things like that. But I am looking into getting a job locally here because I need more money. So I haven't started yet, but that is the plan, seeing what's out there. What stove have you found that works the best with those large 1-pound canisters? I'm not sure what works the best. I have a, like you see, a propane camp stove up there. Just a regular like Coleman style camp stove, and that works fine. I don't know if it works the best, but it works fine. Lighters are temperature sensitive, don't work when too cold. I mean, yeah, if you're talking about really, really, really cold, maybe. But when you're talking about just freezing temperatures, they work fine. And I'm out in the Las Vegas desert, so it's not too much of a concern for me anyway. So I'm going to be right back. If you guys want to wait for about 30 seconds. I've been drinking too much cola and I need some water. All right, I'm back. I'm still alive. We lose anybody? Yeah, I know, too much sugar. I try not to eat that shit, but I'm a weak man. So Chick-fil-A gets me sometimes. But it makes you just feel like sticky and gross, man. I try to lay off it as much as possible, but yeah, I'm back. I'm not abducted. Once you get that solar oven, you'll forget all about the camp stove. That is the plan. To be able to, I mean, the solar ovens are not, they're not cheap, but when you factor in the camp stove, the fuel, storing the fuel, all that, there's no comparison because it will work forever. And you can, like, even if you just focus on being able to cook like half your meals with a solar oven, that would be fantastic. And out here with the weather, I think I'd be able to cook more like 90% of my meals to 100% with the solar oven. So that is going to be my major, assuming it works the way I anticipate that it will, that will be my major way of cooking food, my stored food. Lighters are, oh, I already read that one. Doomsday Preppers had an episode on a man from Florida. He built a Fresnel lens from a TV set. Check it out. Yeah, you can do that. I mean, they have like a convex lens on the front there of an old style TV, not modern TVs, obviously. Stan says the secret to solar is you own a home, pay to have solar with a loan. Instead of paying an electric bill, you pay solar company loan. Once you pay it off, it's free plus excess. Yeah, that's the idea. That usually does not include an off-grid component, though. Those kind of things that you're talking about. I would want to get one that had a battery backup system, because it would be kind of hilarious to have a full solar setup that you couldn't even use when the grid was down, because it just goes right back into the grid and doesn't actually store anything in any way you can use it. So if you're doing it for preparedness purposes, it's going to be more expensive. Boiling water, I'd rather have a stove. You saying compared to the solar oven? Yeah, you can boil water in a solar oven. And also, even if you can't, you're still talking about that being the only, even if you couldn't, in your area or whatever, you're talking about that being the only thing that you would need to use your stove for then. But for my water, boiling it isn't the primary method that I have planned for treating it. It's the Berkey and some other filters that I have, and treating it with chemicals. So the only reason I would be boiling water would be for food. So most of the time, even just simmering it, and it can get to it gets to like almost 400 degrees in the solar oven. So you can boil water in there. They can get up to like 375, 400 degrees, something like that. Aliens gotcha. Nope. eBay username can help support. Sure, my eBay username is North Florida Auctions with underscores in between the words. All right, I'm behind on the chat here a little bit. Look at those square TVs. Any advice for cold weather preps? Preps are going to be the same, except for having to deal with the weather, obviously. So you're still going to need food, you're still going to need water. Then you're just going to have to look at a source of fuel for heating, whether that's going to be a natural gas that you have a big tank put in, whether that's going to be lots and lots of wood, chopped wood, and a wood stove. So you just have to deal with those issues that you have there. And clothing, obviously, is going to be a big thing, and transportation. So whether that means you need special snow tires or snow shoes, probably all of the above, things like that. Just focus on what you need to get around through the winter normally, and make sure you have a way to do those same things if the grid goes down. There's different options for it, but you just got to find out what works for you. For the batteries, all right. Solo roof looks like shingles. That's what I want. Yeah, I think that was Tesla or Elon Musk or somebody came up with solar tiles that look just like regular roof tiles, and you can cover with it. So I mean, they're getting so much better with that technology compared to how it was 10 or 15 years ago. It's not even close. Another 10 years, we'll probably all have it. Yeah, but 400 degrees. Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising too, especially like a place out here. I've gone out there and for like my workout equipment, even though it's shaded, I have a back patio. I have like a dumbbell set, and just like half the rack was in the light, and it got so hot that like the other half that wasn't even in the light was so hot that I couldn't touch it, because it had just absorbed all that heat energy. It was like burning my hand. And yeah, when it's 110 degrees outside and you have something that's focusing the light into a container, it gets really hot. Yeah, Todd said, I mean, you can build your own solar oven, sure, but just like anything else, most people don't want to have to go through the learning process if they're not particularly skilled in handyman type situations, versus something that is designed exactly the way you need it to be. And so for an extra $200 or something, that's worth it for most people to be able to trust it, to know it's going to work, to get exactly what they're looking for, things like that. But it is something that you can build on your own. Unlike, like solar panels or something like that, a solar oven is something that you could make on, or that one could make on their own if you have those kind of abilities. Prep for your region and consider your terrain and climates into those preps, obviously. Do you ever go through periods where you lose motivation to prep or generally lose interest in prepping? No, not really. This is something that's just the way my mind works. There's definitely periods where it feels like something serious happening is either more or less likely, but that never really takes away to where I'm like totally not interested in it. I just would not feel comfortable not having a good, decent set of preparations, just the way my mind works. So I can understand for people who don't have that natural mental process that could happen. And that's why I think it's even more important for them to have a very specific, like, I just need to have 90 days of preps. That way it doesn't matter if you care about it, I can be done with it. I've got that level, not have to worry about it. And you don't need to be motivated or anything. You just treat it like getting your car insurance or anything else. It's something I need to take care of to be able to check the block and move on with my life. And that's the way a lot of people should do it. For someone like me, who's just the way my mind works, it's never going to be an issue to make sure I allocate my time and my resources to prepping. And if anything, it's almost the opposite. I have to come up with my plan to make sure I don't just endlessly do things for the apocalypse or whatever. So the reason I picked 6 months is so I don't just be like, wow, I should have 15 jackets and 8 different kinds of camouflage and 22 boots and 200,000 rounds of ammo. You know what I mean? I would just go crazy. I did concentrate on bug out first, now playing more catch up with bug in preps. Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you think is going to happen, but I think everyone should be ready to be able to leave in case they need to. But I don't think bugging out just for no reason, like I said, is something that is going to make sense for most people. Where do you think the best place to get silver at the best price? AppMex for most people. They're a huge online company, and they can get the premiums down lower than most places. Sometimes if you can find another person to buy it from, you'll usually get the best price, but it's hard to find that because, you know, they're not paying, you take out the middleman. So obviously that can be cheaper that way. Sometimes auctions and locally you can get good deals, but if you're talking about like, look, I just have some money spent, I want to get gold and silver and I want to know I'm getting a good price, just go to appmex.com. They're reliable, they get customer service, all that jazz. They've got a big selection. That's where I would go unless you really, really want to hunt for that perfect deal. Just get it on AppMex. Hit the like button, it helps. I appreciate it, it does help. Hit the like button, bam, 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 bump it up. 22 boots, little boots for mouse. Knowledge is the ultimate prep. Yeah, probably. What does your name mean? The Lord, it's the Humongous, not Humongous, and it's the Lord Humongous. It is the main villain in the old Mad Max 2 movie, Road Warrior. He's the ruler of the post-apocalyptic wasteland, and he's trying to steal the gasoline from Mad Max and his companions. Make sure if you buy grow lights, an indoor grow tent, you buy lots of them and tons of extra bulbs. Also make sure you have a good power source. Grow lights take a lot of energy. Road Warrior, exactly. Bad guy from Road Warrior, yep, exactly. He rules the wasteland. It's the Ayatollah of rock and rolla. Yeah, just walk away and I give you safe passage through the wasteland. That's my YouTube avatar guy. Is like an S&M gear with a hockey mask on, but like jacked bodybuilder guy. That's the Lord Humongous. Need to watch that. And also, if you guys haven't seen the new Mad Max movie, Fury Road, it's fantastic too. I really, really was not holding out hope for that movie. I love the Road Warrior, and even though it was the same guy that was doing this, most people can't recapture that. That, you know, they look at what they think people want to see or what they think made the first one good, and they try to recapture that, and it never ends up good. But that movie was fantastic, and I think it helps that the guy is probably just legitimately crazy, and he had these visions in his head of this crazy stuff, and so he just made another movie about it, and it was awesome. Yeah, I mean, all 4 Mad Max movies. The third one is not a good movie. There's still a lot of stuff in it that I like Master Blaster and the Thunderdome itself, but I hate movies with like kids in it. I don't like how it devolved into like a Hook type scenario with all these feral children and stuff. But I like the Bartertown stuff. But the third one was definitely the weakest, and yeah, Tina Turner's goofiness. But the Fury Road is fantastic. I love it, and obviously I love Road Warrior. It's our future. Well, it was Australia's future, I guess, technically speaking. So if it happens in the U.S., it won't be quite as much of a wasteland unless there is a serious nuclear war. Upset Max instead of Mad Max. Yeah, that's the only real thing that I didn't like about the Fury Road. Not even that I didn't like, but that his car gets like trashed like 10 seconds into the movie, so you don't get the last of the V8 Interceptors driving around. Waterworld is fantastic. I don't care what anybody says. I don't know of any remake being made, but I loved Waterworld. It's so bad, it's good, and I love Dennis Hopper's character as the deacon in that. I think that you definitely can't take that movie too serious, and I don't think that the people who were making it even did. It's you can kind of tell it's like a goofy troll job, and with all that over the top stuff like smokers and the gills and all this other nonsense. But it's really hilarious. I thought about doing one of my reviews on that movie, but it's so ridiculous of a situation that there's nothing in it that would even make sense for doing a review on it. What's in the green bag next to the tan water containers? This is NBC stuff. So we got some overboots. We got a gas mask here. There's another gas mask inside. I think there's the chemical suit in there. We got some of the potassium pills and things like that. So that is my NBC or biological, nuclear biological chemical protection preparations right there. Paper, smell it. That's from Waterworld. Hilariously bad movie. Yeah, the creepy kids in Thunderdome were no good. I didn't like them. I only liked the first like 30, 40 minutes of Thunderdome. Once he gets banished into the desert, it's kind of lame. So, when will you make a video about the stuff behind you? I guess I can do that fairly soon. I probably will be switching it up at different points, you know. But I can tell you right now what I got. We got Emergency Essentials powdered eggs right here. These are big number 10 cans of dehydrated whole eggs in both of these boxes, or all three of these boxes, sorry. Here we have some Primus gas for a little camp stove. Big Berkey water filter I mentioned. We have a Sta-Bil gas stabilizer for I need to fill up these cans again with gas. Like I said, my nuclear, biological, and chemical preparedness kit with some gas masks, rubber over boots, like a Tyvek suit, things like that, the potassium. I have a propane camp stove on top of this box. And on top of the top shelf that you can't see is a bunch of the camping propane canisters to run that. Here I have a BioLite camp stove, which you can use various types of like wood fuel and stuff and actually will charge various, it generates electricity when you use the stove from the heat. You can charge phones and things like that. The little black box on top of the BioLite stove is a crazy axe from BattleBox. Here you can see the barrels of a couple of rifles that I've been showing in videos. And below that right now I have some cans that I've been saving for when I go shooting next. And some 2 liters full of water to supplement this stuff until I get, because I have a bunch down there and some more up there, until I get the barrels. Mask of choice, M17, M40, or M50. I do not know that much about the various features of the different gas masks. At this point, I just have a couple because I don't even remember what model I have. They're old military surplus stuff. They're not American. And because I know I need to have that covered. But luckily, it's not something that I'm incredibly worried about. And so I don't have a lot of expertise in it. So I don't know enough about those masks to comment on them. What's a good amount of LP fuel to keep for backup heat than for cooking? 100% depends on how much you use. You know, if you're in somewhere where that's going to be your main source of heating in the winter, then you're going to need a lot. Look at how much you use, multiply that by how many days you want to be prepared, and there's your answer. You know, it depends on what you're cooking, how much you're cooking, how many people you're cooking for. Are you using it to heat water for other things? Are you using it to heat your house or just for cooking? All that stuff. So you just got to calculate it and multiply that by how many days you want to be prepared for. Because for what would be plenty for one person wouldn't even last a month for someone else, you know? I think Netflix did a spin-off movie of what? What have you been getting from Emergency Essentials? Never mind, you just read my mind. Yeah, it's the whole eggs. These are Honeyville Powdered whole eggs. Postman is the best. Postman is really good. Oh, Cloverfield. 10 was part 2 and Paradox is part 3. Cloverfield Paradox was a total scam, and it was not a movie that was originally made to have anything to do with the Cloverfield movies. They bought it probably super cheap, dubbed over a couple different things they say to make it sound like it's related, and then just plugged it in. It's a hilarious kind of scam. Do you save any other metals like copper? I did for a while back in Florida. Right now, when I moved, I tried to get rid of a lot of stuff like that. So I have a few copper rounds, but other than that, I don't have any other metals besides gold and silver that I'm saving for monetary reasons. I don't think it's a bad idea. I think that to buy copper rounds and things like that is overpriced. If I was going to save copper, I would just try to collect scrap copper and put it somewhere, you know, like copper pipe, things, copper wire, things like that. Or see if you can go to the place that buys copper and just buy raw blocks of it from them at slightly over the melt value, you know, and just store that if you want to. But it's still cheap, so cheap that to store any decent amount of money in copper is going to take up a ton of space and weight. So I don't necessarily recommend it. I don't see any realistic scenario where copper would go way up in price and like gold and silver wouldn't. So, but that's up to you. Quiet Place was an interesting take on Shit the Fan. Yeah, it was. I mean, it was I don't really consider that a Shit the Fan movie so much as I consider it a monster movie, because the only issues were created as a result of the monsters being there. So you can't really talk about the lessons too much because they're all related to a, you know, obviously unrealistic scenario. What do you think of edible landscaping? I think it's a fantastic idea. I mentioned this actually in my last live stream where someone was talking about how they don't let you do, you know, front yard gardening and things like that in a lot of areas, which is absolutely true. So, you know, if you make it obvious, but there's so many plants that you can get that look ornamental and are actually edible. And actually the channel Prepsteaders did a video just recently on like a, whatever, not a velvet bean, but some plant like that they have around their mailbox. It just looks like a totally normal ornamental bush, and is actually every part of the plant is edible. And there's tons of stuff like that. So just look at all the plants that are in your area, the types of plants, and just because you can't have a row of string beans and cucumbers staked into the ground in your front yard in an obvious garden doesn't mean that every shred of plant material on your property couldn't be edible or close to it. There's different types of bushes that have berries. There's different types of like dinosaur kale and all this other weird stuff, you know, fruit trees. That's definitely a fantastic idea. Also check out David the Good with his food gardens or food forests, things like that. It's a fantastic idea, and I think it's what everyone should, ideally, it's what everyone should be doing, even if they're not, you know, necessarily preparedness minded. It just makes more sense. Just got a decontamination kit for my gun. Do you have that in the kit? I don't. In fact, I'm not sure exactly. Are you saying just to like the wipes to be able to wipe it clean, things like that? I'm not sure what the risk would be of having like a contaminated gun, so to speak. Done the keto diet and it's good for suppressing appetite. Do you know any preps with low carbs and high fat? The only preps that, I mean, the only things that are really low carb and high fat are going to be usually animal products. There's a couple plants that fall into this category, but cheese and meat are really the only thing that are going to fall into that, unless you're talking about like coconut oils. You know, I'd stay away from the seed oils, obviously, but coconut oil, olive oil, those are going to fall into that fat. Even things like nuts, they have some carbs in it, but that's another option. So freeze-dried meat and animal products. The eggs are great. Probably the best would be eggs, because you can get it as a powder and it's going to have like no carbs and it's all fat and protein. So I say eggs would be my first choice, and maybe canned butter, something like that. Coconut oil, those would be probably my top things for low carbs and high fat. But I also wouldn't be too worried about using carbs for your preparedness foods, stored like long-term stored foods, if you're on keto or keto, or however you want to say it, or something like that. Because you're going to remember, it's going to be an emergency situation. So if it's really a choice between not eating or having a bowl of rice, you're going to be fine. You know, it's not going to have a problem. Most of the problem with carbs is there's obviously nothing wrong with ketogenic diets or very low carb, high fat, anything like that. But the main problem with carbs is not carbs in and of themselves. It's the high processed carbs, the fructose, things like that. If you look at some of these seed oils, those are all bad. But strictly speaking, carbs in and of themselves are not necessarily the 100% the enemy. Low carb, high fat, the average American cannibalism in the aftermath. Yeah, so the average American right now, yeah, something like pemmican or hardtack might work if it's made out of fat and not like grains. Yeah, you can harvest dock in the river, dandelions in the yard, lettuce. You have edible weeds, even cattails in ponds and things like that. But there's tons of stuff you can get. It's just not going to be to landscape that's edible. It's just not going to be traditional fruit and vegetable foods you're used to. It's not going to be regular beans. It's not going to be normal lettuces. But lots of plants have like edible leaves and edible berries, things like that. So just find out what they are. Pick the ones that look most like an ornamental plant and put those in there. Fantastic idea. Do you stock honey? I do. I have a lot of honey, actually. Not a shitload of it, but I have a decent amount of honey. And it can last basically forever. It'll harden up on you sometimes, but you can still melt it down. That's obviously pretty much all carbs, but it's natural at least, assuming you get good honey and not just some, where they mix it with corn syrup and stuff like that. For shit hit the fan, keto diet is not a very good option. I only think it's not necessarily a good option because it's going to be hard to store those items. If it's a good diet for the human body, then it's a good diet for the human body, regardless of what else is going on. But it's certainly harder and more expensive to store keto food than it would be to just store grains and things like that. Sam's Club is raw honey for about $13 a quart. Is about the lowest cost here. Yeah, if you're a beekeeper, that's been. Do I stockpile salt also? I don't stockpile it in large quantities. I have some salt, but if you have a lot of the prepackaged foods, you are going to be getting plenty of salt. So unless you need a large quantity of it for storing meat or doing other things, like then I don't think salt is a huge consideration that you need to have tons of it, like bags and bags of it. Just get a couple pounds of it and you should be fine. If you have canned goods and stockpiled foods, you're going to have plenty of salt in that already. And you guys who are, if you're thinking about joining the Patreon, I'm going to be giving away a lot of stuff, I think, on there pretty soon. I can't guarantee it for the rules of Patreon, but feeling strongly led that I'm going to be giving. I've just mailed out first batch of some giveaway stuff, and I'm going to be giving away some cool knives and stuff on there too, so check it out. Shit the fan, I think you should just eat what you can as often as you can. Famine is always around the corner. It depends on how serious. Obviously, if it's one of those movie level shit the fan scenarios, and yeah, you're going to want to just soak up every calorie you can get whenever you can get it. And long-term health isn't going to be a huge consideration unless you've gotten into a stable, homesteading type situation after the fact. And if that's the case, then you're really not going to have availability of stuff like processed sugar anyway, so you're not going to have to worry about it too much. Hit that like button all. Yes, please do. It helps me out. Go ahead and jab the like button, and it definitely helps. You guys have anything else that you want to talk about, let me know real quick. I don't want to go too long with these because I think if people see videos after the fact that are like 2 hours long, they kind of shy away from it. But yeah, gotten some cool stuff out of BattleBox. I'll probably save that for the next live stream because I didn't get to go over too many of them that I've used for camping. But I've been happy with a lot of the stuff that I've gotten from them and actually been able to use. Not just gimmicks. I have really been using this stuff, so that's good. Yeah, you can use salt to cure meat, but like I said, if you're not planning on doing that, like doing a lot of hunting, I don't really hunt. I've always wanted to go on some actual serious hunts, and I never have. I've hunted things like chipmunks and stuff like that, and gone fishing, but nothing serious, and that's something that I definitely plan on doing at some point. Goodbye, Levi. Thanks for stopping by. I know it's 9 o'clock on the East Coast, right? McGregor or Khabib? Good question, man. I want Conor to win this fight so badly. I love Notorious. Khabib is a wrecking machine, though, and it's stylistically a very bad matchup for Conor McGregor. So we've seen Khabib get stuff sneak in and hit him with like the Michael Johnson fight and stuff like that. But if he can't tag him quickly in the first round and hurt him, which he can. I mean, he's incredibly good. watching fights between guys like Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier and stuff like that, and then seeing what Conor has done to these guys just shows you how good he really is. But Khabib is a wrecking machine, and he's 21-0, has never even really been in trouble. He's extremely good at the things that Conor McGregor is worst at, but it goes the other way too. Conor McGregor is best at the things that Khabib is worst at. So if I had to bet my life on it, I would pick Khabib, especially at the way the current line is. He's only like a -180 favorite. But I really am rooting for Conor McGregor, man. He has come through every time, and it's pretty amazing, and I'm definitely going to be rooting for him. That fight is happening here in Vegas. Not going to it live. It's too expensive. It already sold out in like a day, but I will definitely be watching it. And there's a couple other good fights on that card as well that I'm looking forward to. So you know what I will be doing on Saturday night, October 6th. So I'm rooting for McGregor. Unfortunately, I think Khabib is the favorite for a reason. I'm not going to go ahead and go out and do as much as say I think he will win, but he is the favorite, and I think he should be. Favorite martial arts styles. I mean, it depends on what you mean by favorite, like which is I think is the coolest, which I think is the most effective. You know, I personally think that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has proven itself to be one of the most effective in one-on-one combat. Like if you are just get thrown into a pit with somebody else, the person who has superior Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is usually going to win the fight. Now, there's gaps in every martial art because they're a system based on particular either styles or rules or whatever. So you want to be well-rounded if you're talking about self-defense. You need to be good at striking, you need to be good at grappling, and you need to be good at the transitions. So that's what I recommend for everyone. I think for the striking arts, the most effective and simple to learn would be Western boxing or Muay Thai, kickboxing. And obviously, there's no martial art that is completely useless. It's the rule sets and the training styles that make it dictate whether they're effective or not. So something like Taekwondo, you see a lot of extremely effective techniques. They're incredibly good, fast kicks, things like that, super flexibility. But it's the rule set and the training style that's made a lot of those guys not as effective in full-on combat because they don't train the same way. They rarely train 100% sparring to kill each other. They train with a very restrictive rule set compared to something like mixed martial arts. There's a lot of things you can't. You're not even taking people down, things like that. So even while that's still true with boxing and kickboxing, it's there's more hard sparring in those, things like that. For most cases, I mean, obviously there are legit Taekwondo gyms and stuff where they train for tournaments and things. And you see guys like Anthony Pettis and other fighters who have Joe Rogan and stuff. He's not, technically speaking, not a mixed martial arts fighter, but these guys that have Taekwondo backgrounds can do some crazy stuff. And the same goes for the traditional Chinese and Japanese martial arts. But I would pick a striking art that has a lot of full contact kind of competitions because that really kind of shaves away the stuff that doesn't work in real full context. So I'd say either Western boxing or kickbox or a Thai kickboxing. Then for the transitional arts, you either use freestyle wrestling or judo or even Greco-Roman wrestling, something like that. And then for the ground arts, you have submission wrestling, catch wrestling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, things like that. So I would try to train in all of those disciplines. Do you fight train? I have trained no-gi Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the past, and I'm actually starting up here again pretty soon. It's something that I miss, being able to just choke somebody. You got to have that in your life. And I definitely want to start training striking as well because I've never done any formal striking training. And so that's my plan very soon, actually. I prefer multiple styles and disarming plus pressure points. Sure, I mean, multiple styles is the best way. I mean, you want to, because if you're talking about self-defense, there are, no restrictions. So you don't want to say like, oh, I do this style, because all you're saying when I do this style is that there's some techniques that I'm not using. That's what style means. So when you say I do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, all you're really saying is there's some fighting techniques that I don't train regularly. That's a better way to look at it. So when you say, oh, I'm a kickboxer, that's just saying, oh, I don't train some of these techniques regularly. Some of these other, you're just saying which techniques you don't train regularly. So it's obviously better to train as many of these different things as possible. Even like if you go to a jiu-jitsu gym, they're going to say, oh, don't do leg locks. You can't do a foot reap or whatever because in tournaments, they don't allow that. And like that is limiting you in a way that real life doesn't. Yeah, if you know judo and boxing, yeah, if you have a good striking skill and a good basic grappling skill, you're going to be better off than, you know, vast majority of people on the planet. Wally J. Todd Hendricks. Wally J. I don't know what that is. What's your EDC? Depends. Most of the time, it's very simple. I have a minimalist wallet that I've really liked recently. This is called a Divided, I think, is the brand. And I like it because I have a lot of cards for various, either the casino rewards cards, different credit cards for the reward points, grocery store cards, things like that. So you have that, and then you have space for cash in it, but it's zipped up so it can't fall out. And then it has a front pocket for either your ID and your 1 or 2 most used credit cards, so you're not always zipping this thing open. So most of the time I just pull it out, pull the card out, I'm good to go. Other than that, I always carry a pocket knife. Right now, I have this Spyderco, which is fantastic. And this one is a slip joint, very small, so it can be concealed in accordance with the Nevada laws without having to have a permit. In Nevada, you have to have a concealed carry permit for the guns, obviously, but you can open carry the guns. And the concealed carry permit for guns does not cover knives. You have to specifically petition the sheriff or whatever to get a concealed carry permit for knives. But you can open carry whatever knife you want to, just like the gun. So it's kind of stupid, but I just usually carry this one just so in case I need to put it in my pocket or something, I would be in compliance with that. So, but I have, you know, a bunch of knives obviously that I carry. And beyond that, I carry my phone, and that is usually it. And my keys. I don't carry a lot of gear. I keep some car kit, and that's where most of the stuff is. But I don't like being weighed down with like a ton of stuff. And I don't yet have my concealed carry permit for Nevada, which I should. But the main reason I don't is because here I don't get a waiver on the class for being military. So I have to take an 8-hour class and pay for it. So I haven't done that yet. But I need to. No excuses. I'm slacking. I need to get that done. Can you carry in your state? Yeah, you can open carry. So if I want to, I can open carry. And you can carry. It's a shall issue state for the concealed carry permit. I just have to take the class. Do you think America could have another civil war revolution anytime in the near future? It certainly could. I think I agree with Vox Day and the idea that we're more likely looking at a breakup or a balkanization of sorts, simply because there isn't 2 distinct factions. There's a lot of different various interest groups. Like even if you look at just like right versus left, it isn't that clean. It doesn't break up like that. And it's so large, the U.S., and there's different ideological groups, these different regions, that I think it's much more likely, due to demographics especially, that there'll be some sort of breakup within the next 15 or 20 years, than much more likely than there'll be like a very traditional kind of hot civil war, which I think is better, obviously. But I only learned street fighting, the basic hand-to-hand combat in the Air Force. I'm very good with blades. Yeah, never. I mean, same. Kind of lost my train of thought. Oh, when you're talking about training for self-defense, it's very deceptive if you go through like a move and training, even with someone who's just kind of resisting you. Even if they're like 80% resisting you, it's a totally different experience than it's going against someone who is going 100%, not following any particular rules and trying to stop you. I really recommend that you do full sparring in whatever art or various arts that you are practicing. It will change your mind about some of this stuff and about what works. Stuff like that's why someone mentioned pressure points earlier. That shit doesn't, I'm just going to be honest, it doesn't work. I mean, you can go to someone in the dojo and be like, ow, that fucking hurts, you know, and maybe say, okay, yeah, I'll tap out. But like if you're in someone is just like runs at you on the street and jumps on you, trying to like grab or like pinch him here or whatever, it doesn't do anything. I mean, you can have people getting stabbed and stuff in fights, and people breaking their hands in mixed martial arts bouts and fighting for 4 more rounds, punching you with a broken hand, things like that. You think that like squeezing it, it's not like in the movies where they're gonna paralyze and shit their pants when you hit the right pressure point. That stuff just doesn't work. What does work is major joint locks, and even like the small joint manipulation. That stuff hurts, but in a real fight, the reason they outlaw those in the UFC and mixed martial arts unified rules is not because it's too dangerous in sense of like too effective. It's just it breaks the finger and it doesn't stop the fight. So the fight still goes on. The person doesn't tap out. They just are fighting now with a broken hand. And that's exactly what happens in a real world situation. And so many of these self-defense moves that they teach you are like that. To like, do this, do that, do that, you know, and like it's just try it against someone who doesn't even know what you're trying to do, but just say, pay somebody in your gym or something, say, I'll give you $100 if you can stop me from doing this thing, and then try to do it. And it's a much more difficult. It's a weird thing being sort of good at martial arts, because if like when I was at my peak of training the most often, I was decent, you know, at jiu-jitsu, and it would be a weird feeling to be able to completely destroy someone who came in off the street, even someone significantly bigger than you, to the point where you could be like carrying on a conversation with someone else, making jokes and stuff while you're just physically dominating this person. Meanwhile, someone else who's smaller than you and been doing this stuff for years, like a brown belt or something, could just turn you into a helpless child and do the same thing to you. And it's like, you're like, this is horrible. So it simultaneously makes you feel incredibly empowered, but also incredibly vulnerable, because you realize intellectually that like, now I could probably take like 95% of humanity or something if you get to like purple belt level, in which I never did, but I'm saying if you're like a purple belt in jiu-jitsu or something, or even a good blue belt, and you have some decent striking skills and good cardio, you could take out like 95% of humans on the planet in like a one-on-one fight. But then you just always know that there's a lot of people out there that could just kill you without either bare hands, without even breaking a sweat. You can't tell by looking at them who they are. It's not necessarily the people who are better than you. I mean, look at guys like Ryan Hall. This guy looks like a total dweeb if you're just looking at what he looks like physically, but he's one of the best jiu-jitsu guys in the world. He could just wins open weight tournaments and stuff, and rip your tendons apart and stuff. So you never know. But it's definitely a experience I think most people need to have to understand how effective this stuff can be, but at the same time realize just how vulnerable you can be in a physical confrontation. Don't try the stone cold stunner in real life. Trust me. I trust you. I would not do that. There was some case a while back. I forget what it was. This was years ago, but it was some kid who was like 12 years old, like ended up killing his either sister or stepsister because they were like practicing wrestling moves, and he ended up, I don't know if he was on trial for murder or something, but it got serious news time because he was doing some sort of choke slam or like a F5 or some stone cold stunner nonsense like that, and he ended up like killing this girl. And yeah, that was big in the news for a while. Favorite brand of freeze-dried food? I don't have a favorite brand simply because I haven't actually eaten enough of them. Especially freeze-dried. I don't have any current freeze-dried foods, and I haven't bought a lot of that in the past because mostly freeze-dried is just fruits and meats are usually what's freeze-dried, sometimes cheeses. And I was, just for cost reasons, I'd made most of my food stockpiles based around grains, beans, things like that. So I didn't have a lot, and canned meats are cheaper than the freeze-dried meats. So I'd have canned chicken, stuff like that, and not a lot of freeze-dried meats. And if I didn't do a lot of like opening up and tasting them. So I haven't actually literally tasted enough to make an opinion about which ones I think are best. White Space Marine said, I had a short little woman kick the crap out of me once. I am 6 feet, 220, and work out of the gym 3 to 4 a week. Yeah, it's certainly possible. The problem is that a lot of women get this in their head that because there's women out there that can do that, that like if they learn a couple techniques, they can beat up some guy who's bigger than them, without realizing how big of a gap there is between like the average woman and the average man in terms of speed, strength, size, things like that, even cardio, stuff like that. And if you're not ready for that, someone going full out, and because also even when they're training, it's very rare for guys to go 100% and not hold back a little bit when they're training with women, especially women that are smaller than them and things like that, or that they know. It's just, they just don't do it. It's not in guys' heads to just like trash women physically most of the time just because they have the opportunity. So even though they might be beating you and you feel like you're putting up a good fight, it's probably going to be worse if someone's really going at it 100% trying to hurt you, and like a criminal or something like that. And you have to be ready for that. So that's what you really do need to train for. You need to tell someone, hey, I want you to try 100% right now. Not always, because you'll get beat up, you know, and just your body will be hurting, but you need to know what it feels like and exactly what you do in that situation. What are some financial investments I should look into right now? I'm not an investment advisor, so this is not investment advice or anything like that. But I think gold and silver are incredibly undervalued. I think real estate and stock market are overvalued. But it depends on where you're at. Rental properties or something that's going to be bringing in an immediate income is a good idea. I think anything that is going to be producing, that's a physical good that's going to be producing income. So I would look into if you can have some sort of rural land that you can maybe rent out for grazing or for lumber or farming or something like that. If you can get a good deal, a rental property that you can immediately start renting out for either normal renting or Airbnb or something like that. Just residential houses and commercial real estate, I think, is a little bit overvalued right now. And I actually would go so far as to predict that over the next 5 years or so, we're going to see a significant dip. So I might try to save up a big chunk of cash for if there is a dip in the market or real estate. So I would not completely divest myself of any of those categories, but if you own your house, I wouldn't be worried about buying more, even if you owe on it, especially if you owe on it, I wouldn't be worried about buying more real estate right now for residential purposes or anything like that, at least. But I would still own some stuff in the stock market, especially, Southeast Asia and emerging markets, stuff like that. I would try to limit my exposure to the US dollar, get some precious metals, get some international stocks, get some rural land. Anything physical like that you can get your hands in would be useful. And just try to focus on stuff that's actually going to be producing income in the meantime, so that even if the value of it goes down, like if you do buy a house, you're not just sitting on it hoping it goes up in value. Same with stocks, focus on dividend stocks and things like that, and realize that the vast majority of the increase in the stock market over the past few years is from like 5 stocks. They call them the FANG stocks. It's Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. So FANG, F-A-A-N-G. The huge majority of the upswing is in these few overvalued stocks. So I'd be careful of the stock market, but you don't want to just completely divest yourself of it. So I would be putting money more into the things that are undervalued. So I think I would definitely have a nice chunk of cash, be ready for these dips. And I would have a nice chunk of gold and silver because I think that's undervalued. And then so put more into those than you put into the other things. But I would be putting money into all of them. And if you that's your major investments. I think part of your investment of your portfolio should be money that you can play around with, not for like fun stuff, but for like investments, maybe 5%, something like that, no more than 10% for like these high risk, high reward things like cryptocurrency. So if for every $100 you put into investments, if 5 or 10 of it you want to put into stuff that has a chance of making you a lot of money, but also has a decent chance of just going to zero, that's fine. People have made millions off Bitcoin, but you don't want to go all in on something that's that volatile. But I definitely think that there's still a lot of potential money to be made there if there's a currency crisis. So, if you want to put a little bit of money in that, that's fine too. Just don't put your rent money in there, so to speak, or your retirement money. But I think it's useful to have some money in your portfolio that you can have for highly speculative things like that have a chance of, making you a lot of money. And then if for some reason, like say you have 5% of your money, put it into Bitcoin, all of a sudden it goes up so much that now it's 20% of your money. Well, then take it out to where it's back down to 5%, and then spread that out of the other ones that you think are undervalued. So right now I would be if you have a lot in like real estate and the stock market, I'd be taking some of that cash and some of that out at these high values and putting it into gold and silver and some cash and potentially a little bit in cryptocurrency. Do you have any electronic secured in the case of EMP? I do not right now. Not any of my major prepping items are electronic. So while it would be a pain in the ass, the only things that I have as part of my preps that I would really lose, other than my car and stuff like that, is flashlights and things like that. I don't have the solar electricity. I have a couple hand radios, but I don't have a big part of my preps based on electronics, so I'm not too worried about it. But as I get more electronics, I will be making a Faraday cage for those things. And but with the solar cooker, propane stove, canned food, stuff like that, water, drip filter, don't need electricity, so it's not a huge concern. What was the consensus? Do Princess or Rogue survive? Oh, I think the consensus was that they definitely survive. You can't beat them physically. Use your brains, fight dirty. Yeah, there's if you want to see a hilarious video on how to win a fight at all costs, watch Boss Rutan's street fighting DVDs. It's amazing and hilarious, and he teaches you that a lot of people have to get out of this mindset of that it would be like a contest when you're or that you'd be fighting dirty. If someone attacks you and is trying to hurt you or kill you, there's nothing that's off the table. You just got to fight it all to win at all costs. These cars these days are very resistant to EMPs. That's what I've heard. I mean, it's so hard to get real information on EMP because there's no way to validate or check what anyone's saying. Even people who have there's credentialed people who say both sides of the story. You know, there was an EMP, I think it was like a whole group that was actually formulated to try and test, like not a convention, I forget the word, but they made this EMP study and where they would zap all these cars, and of all the modern cars, I think only one of them had to be towed away. A lot of them, almost all the cars shut down, but then eventually restarted later on their own, and only one wouldn't restart, had to be towed away. And then other people say it's going to be so bad that batteries even will be fried. So there's really no way to know. I think it's putting some really critical, items in a Faraday cage is a decent precaution if you're super relying on those for your preparedness plan. I have not read Survival Theory by Jonathan Hollerman, but I think someone keeps posting about it. Is that you on my comments? I haven't read it. Yeah, I've seen it. Someone had commented on it a few times in my videos. I think mostly related to the fact that they thought that most people underestimate the seriousness of how the zombie horde, how bad the zombie hordes will be in a serious shit demand event. And while that may be true, I think it's a mistake that most preppers make, that they focus almost exclusively on the most serious end of the shit the fan spectrum. And that's why they ignore things like money, because in their mind, they're preparing for Mad Max. Everything they do, like prepping, is to prepare for a grid down, WROL, total shit the fan scenario. Not, oh, I lost my job, not Venezuela, not stuff like that, because those are actually much more common and much more likely to happen. So that's what you should really be focusing on. And all the things that are good for that help you in a serious shit the fan scenario. But yeah, prep your money. Absolutely. I still think it's the single most important thing, because it matters whether or not anything happens. I mean, your financial situation is important regardless of what happens. And it's doubly important if, there's some sort of economic collapse. But even if we enter the most prosperous period of the country has ever seen for the next 100 years, if you don't have any money, you're going to be suffering, so that's something you got to take care of. And that's what I'm working on for myself too, because that's why I said I'm going to have to get a regular job here pretty soon, because I just don't make enough to be able to save money and things like the way I want to do. I'm just so mad that I can't buy a ton of gold and silver right now at these prices. So I definitely got to go out there and start making more money. Are there any air quality problems in Nevada? I don't think so. There's a lot of dust, but as far as cities go, there doesn't seem to be big smog problems, things like that. It is a city that everybody drives in, so it's no better than most of the others, but it's very windy. It seems like a lot of air comes in off the mountains and stuff, so I think it kind of cleans it out better than a lot of stale, stuffy big cities, like maybe New York or something. And so there is dust issues sometimes, but there's not a lot of industry here. So beyond the cars, there's not factories and things like that. So you don't have Shanghai type issues. And I would guess, I haven't looked it up, but I would guess it's above average for a city of its size and air quality, but obviously not as good as if you're very rural. Keep watching my channel, dude. I have been. Not going anywhere. You plan to back up food preps by gardening? Do you have all your tools? Is your bug out site dirt opened up? If best, rototill. I don't have a particular bug out site like that. For me, bugging out is if you have to leave. It's just being prepared to leave in the event of an emergency. Here, and with the weather, the ground, the water being so scarce, gardening and raising food in that sense is not a big part of my plan. It's just not realistic to be able to farm a lot out here. Certainly possible, but you'd have to be really set up specifically for that. What kind of job are you looking for? Just curious. Not sure. I'm looking into maybe law enforcement or something like that, because I'm well suited for that with my military background, but just seeing what's out there is something that I don't want to do, something that is going to kill my soul. I've been working for myself for so long that it's going to have to be something interesting. So just looking around to see what they have. I don't have anything that is necessarily off limits, but I also don't have anything particular that I'm looking at very specifically. So if you guys know of any crazy jobs out here, we have nasty clay soil. Yeah, it's really like weird dirt out here. It's like a powder that kind of clumps into hard rocks and stuff. So then the water kind of sits on it. Doesn't even soak in very well. Customer service for 20 years. Whew, yeah, that's rough. I've had to do pretty much all kinds of jobs. I started out in high school. I had to work at McDonald's like everybody else, and because I wanted to get money to be able to get a car. I didn't have one yet, but there was a McDonald's about 3/4 of a mile, maybe a mile from my house, so I would just walk there. Did that job for a while, then worked at a pet store for a while. Then when I was in college, I had a cool job where I worked for the Department of Transportation, where I would go to this DOT site where they were testing different kinds of pavement, and they would have a big machine there that ran a wheel back and forth over the pavement, like it was like pretending to be a semi-truck basically to test how the pavement would deal with this extreme use. And I would just sit there and watch the machine and do some maintenance on it like 2 times a shift. And so I could watch movies and be read books or do whatever I wanted to, other than if something happened with the machine. So that was a pretty good job. Didn't pay anything, it only paid $8 an hour or whatever. But okay, thank you, Prepper Princess. I will definitely keep that in mind. My email is right. Yeah, exactly. Everything's air conditioned here, so that's good. Yeah, I mean, I've looked at the security jobs, stuff like that, see what's out there. So that's kind of stuff I'm looking at because I'm obviously trying to max it. My goal is to do it for money. Obviously, I'm going to try to get the best point of the most amount of money, but where I can still put up with the day-to-day stuff. So I'm sure I can find some jobs that are really easy to do and not bothersome, but then also if I want to be making as much, because the whole point is to be able to sock money away in as much as possible. Do you worry about drawing attention to yourself because of your prepping channel? No, not really, because the only reason that would be, I mean, if there was like a Venezuelan type situation, maybe some people would think that I had stuff because the internet's still active. But in that situation, the rule of law is still active too. In a WRL situation where it's really serious, people are willing to kill you for your supplies, who's going to know who I am? Other preppers. The odds that someone who would know who I am, recognize me when just seeing me on the street in the advanced scenario, I probably have like a big beard or something too, enough to where they would be willing to come after me and take my stuff, but also wouldn't be a prepper already, because that's who watches my channel, I think is just vanishingly low. And it's well worth it to be able to get this knowledge out there and at the same time make a few bucks from ad revenue to contribute to my preps. I think the advantages of those things well outweigh the really, really small chance that someone who would hurt me for my stuff is going to recognize me after an apocalypse or something like that. Right. First of all, I'm not even going to come in contact with the people who are watching this now, who wouldn't hurt me, who likely are prepared themselves. And the odds that I would come in contact with someone who knew who I was and knew I was a prepper and wasn't prepared and was going to hurt me and was able to hurt me, because I'm not like some super soft target. I've got firearms, I've got some martial arts training, so I'm not going to be out and about like not paying attention. It's just such a small risk that I'm not worried about it. So that's my thoughts on that. Yeah, so anyway, so I worked at the DOT job for a while and then went through college. Then I got out. When I was going through ROTC, I thought I was going to be active duty. Then they gave me transportation branch and National Guard. So while I did have the 1 week in the month, 2 weeks a year drill pay and everything, I had to get a job. So then I started working for a Walmart distribution center, which is a warehouse job. Worked that for like 5 years. Then I started working at the University of Florida, doing some basic finance stuff. Then I started doing my own auction business and the thrift store thing that I did for a few years in Florida. Then after that, I went back to UF for like a year. And then I moved out here and had been doing, right after that until I moved out here, I've been doing just online stuff. So just the eBay, just the YouTube revenue, just some affiliate sales, various stuff like that. And then random odd things here and there. I actually owned a thrift store in Florida. I had a thrift store in Gainesville, Florida for a year, which it was too small of a location. So then I moved into doing the live auctions in a warehouse in Gainesville and did that for about another year or so, but it was just the warehouse was so expensive that it was easier for me to just go back to just doing the online stuff, eBay and Amazon and stuff online, and not trying to do the live auctions. It was fun, but I mean, there's just not a lot of money, and it's a lot of work. You have to like drive around, buy up all this stuff, haul it in the truck, and price it, sort it, do all this stuff. How should someone get into being an affiliate? Depends on what you are talking about being an affiliate for. The main thing that you have to be able to do affiliate sales effectively is some kind of audience or traffic. Because if you have no way to get your links or whatever, or your ads in front of people, then you're just not going to sell anything. But if you have a built-in, I mean, you can do like niche sites and things like that, which is something I've been looking into, but you still have to be able to build traffic. So you have to, there's some websites like Share a Sale and things like that that I know of that you can sign up for and then find the affiliate people, but you have to have a website already. Some companies and products, you can sign up as an affiliate directly through them. Then there's the Amazon affiliate. You can sign up and be a generic affiliate and link to anything on Amazon and get a percentage. Their percentages are much lower though. You know, you're only going to get about 4% on average of anything that's bought through your affiliate link. But you know, all that little stuff can add up. Dark Ronin says, great channel, thank you. Been subbing for a long time, appreciate it. I'm also in Vegas. Do you belong to any local prepper groups? No, I do not. I don't know of any specific prepper groups. I've been here for just about a year, haven't really sought that sort of thing out. So, yeah. You can email me at rulethewasteland@gmail.com if you want with any information about local groups, and I can check them out. Prepper Princess says I make a whopping $20 a month on Amazon affiliates. Yeah, exactly. I think I make an average of 30 to 40 bucks a month on Amazon affiliates. And so it's awesome. That's great, but it's not something that is a huge source of income. How is the water situation in Vegas if the lake goes dry? If the lake goes dry, it's incredibly dire. There will be no water if Lake Mead ran out. Do you ever drop ship? I did. I haven't recently, but it's definitely a viable option. I used to drop ship live algae actually from eBay sales. I knew a guy who had a pet supply website, and he would sell live like plants for saltwater aquariums and live shrimp and stuff like that. But he didn't want to do all the individual eBay listings because it was too much work for him. So he would, I would just do the listing on eBay without even touching the product. If someone bought it, I would buy it from his website and just put their shipping address in and send it to them. So from your username, have you heard of Wasteland Weekend? I have heard of it. I've never been there, but it looks hilarious. It would be fantastic to have some like crazy Mad Max party. Maybe I'll go there one of these days. It would be fantastic. Rogue just uploaded a new video. Is it she's been doing almost one or I think she's been doing one every day. I think that's part of her Prepper 365 project, is she's doing 365 days in a row of videos. So she's definitely had a lot of content. Any chance of wells in that region? Obviously, yeah, it's possible. It's expensive, and you'd have to go down hundreds of feet, and I think it's probably not even legal in a lot of residential neighborhoods and things like that. But if you have a rural property, it's certainly an option. But I think storage and rain collection is a better idea, because it doesn't rain a lot, but it does rain. I think we get 30 rains a year or something like that, which rains. It's hilarious because people are so crazy about the weather out here. They think that it's like, oh my God, it's raining. And I'm like, it's barely sprinkling. I'm from Florida, where you get inches like a day during the summer for like 30 days in a row. Yeah, underground cisterns, anything like that. I mean, you can, if you have a way to collect enough water when it does rain and store it, you should be fine. But I'm pretty sure wells are an option pretty much anywhere if you're willing to pay the price to dig through ground rock and stuff. Eventually there's water down there. And it may be better than, I mean, I would probably make some sort of like, if I had a bug out location, like a rural property in either outside of Vegas or in northern Arizona or something, just do a buried cistern of something like 20,000 gallons or something like that, or make a pool. A pool is probably the best legal way to do it in a residential area, because no one's going to think that that's weird. Then you have tens of thousands of gallons. So, I hope you have any last minute questions. Okay, thoughts on your latest battle box. That is the one that was the tracking stuff. Not as something that I'm really that into, but again, that's what's kind of cool about this, is the battle box, is that it's something that you wouldn't necessarily have thought of. So I like the knowledge related items, you know, like the track the books that show the different tracks and things like that. I like the little trail markers. Those could be useful for a bug out bag or cache, stashing a cache and things like that. So very interesting. And I like the Tops knife that was in there. I always like Tops knives. Yeah, if you don't have a well dug, then your only options are collection and storage. That's really it. I mean, that's what you're stuck with. Sure, I mean, better something that you use. I don't know what your arsenal looks like, but as long as you have something else that you could use as like a bigger rifle or shotgun, then I wouldn't have a problem with you getting rid of that for a 22 handgun. The Ruger Mark IVs are pretty reliable, but they don't hold a lot of ammo. So if you already have you said you already have a 22 rifle already, right? So 22 handguns are good. They have a bunch of different options. I haven't used a lot of them. I do have a Ruger Mark IV, and it's pretty fantastic, but I don't like the low capacity, and the magazines are kind of unnecessarily limited, I think, because the handle is normal size, but the magazines are really thin and only hold like 10 rounds. Okay, yeah, like I said, I know I'm always pimping the Ruger 1022s, but they're one of the best guns out there, in my opinion. They're cheap. They're only like $240, brand new. You can get high capacity magazines. They're very reliable, and you can get this one like as a short one. I think you can get even shorter than this if you want, and you can get all sorts of customizable options and stuff like that. So they're one of my top choices for a gun. Do you have anything to kill time in a shit the fan situation? Yeah, I've got normal board games. I have books, things like that. It's not a huge concern of mine. I think there'll be plenty of stuff to do. And if it's in a major shit the fan scenario, then there's going to be stuff like that at the stores and stuff still that no one's going to bother taking. You know, like bookstores aren't going to be looted. So if you need to go there, that's fine. Yeah, 1022. I can't say enough good things about them. But there's plenty of other good options out there. Yeah, exactly. If you have a small solar panel, you can watch your DVDs and stuff like that. So no big deal. Cool, guys. I think I'm going to call it. It's been a while. Time for me to get ready to help some friends out with some stuff. Thanks for watching. If you guys, like I said, if you guys want to jump on my Patreon, even a couple bucks, I'm going to be giving away a lot of this battle box stuff that I don't particularly need in the future. So, and check out RuleTheWasteland.com. All that good stuff, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later. Peace out.